What causes a woman, near 70 years of age, with no prior criminal record, to first kill cats, then her friends, then children? What then possesses them to make a meal out of their victims and feed them to their own neighbors? Today we explore the life and atrocities of Sofia Zhukova. In the year of 1939, in Zivagino, a small village area about 40 miles away from Nizhny Novgorod, Sofia Zhukova was born. She was raised in poverty and was homeschooled. As a result, Sofia was poorly educated, unable to even read or write. This, of course, is far from the ideal start in life, but nothing troubling was known to have occurred in those formative years. Sofia did grow to be a physically imposing woman, and this is an asset that transferred favourably to her vocations moving forward. It was whilst labouring in a factory, in fact, that she met a mild-mannered, reserved man named Ivan. Opposites attracted in this particular case, and the two would soon be married and go on to have 3 sons, one of which sadly died prematurely. The remaining family settled in Khabarovsk in eastern Russia. After marriage, Sofia took on the role of a pig butcher at a sausage factory. Her and her husband worked for many years to ensure that her 2 sons had the education she never did, in order for them to have an easier, more successful life. By all accounts, they had raised them well. Once grown, the boys got themselves good jobs, left their family home, and never returned, neither to their old home nor their parents' lives in any capacity. This surely affected Sofia, and may well have been one of many sparks that caused a fuse within her mind to eventually blow. Sofia retired from the sausage factory, but without support from their children, her and her husband Ivan had to continue to work. As such, Sofia moved on to a job as a security guard at a home improvement store near to her home, indicating that she was still formidable, despite being well into her 60s at this point. In 2005, Ivan tragically passed away, leaving Sofia alone in the world. This was when her mental state deteriorated to worrying extents, leading to escalating conflicts with many residents of the neighbourhood, who would later report that Sofia was cranky and often threatening, although no one took the threats seriously. We know now, of course, that they most certainly should have. It started with defenseless animals. The neighbours knew about it. They talked about how she had axed local cats. At this point, she hardly tried to hide her now horrid nature. It consumed her. No one was safe, not even the children. Later, in the year 2005, reports of a missing girl caused disorder in the community. Her name was Anastasia Alexenko, and she was last seen alive by another young girl called Vika. Vika alleged that the two had talked for a while before Anastasia went into the building, but an elderly woman had supposedly followed her inside. The description of that woman, it won't surprise you to hear, matched the features of another of the building's residents, Sofia. When brought in for interrogation, Sofia was calm, thorough, and never wavered on her statement. The young girl Vika testified that Sofia would curse and shout at neighborhood kids, especially Anastasia. Sofia denied this and instead spoke of having a friendly relationship with Anastasia and said that she loved their interactions, even going as far as to say that she misses her every second of the day. When police told her about Vika's testimony, she said that Anastasia was merely running past her and that she had nothing to do with her disappearance. The statement and Sofia's demeanor was clearly convincing. enough for the investigators to mark her off the suspects list. Disconcertingly, in the weeks following, Anastasia's mother received a phone call in which she was told that her daughter was still alive. The person who made the call was unknown, but the location from which they called was not. It was a local sausage factory. The message also would soon have to prove to be untrue in the most dreadful of ways. A local man walking home one day came upon some frozen meat near the city dump. He took it, intending to feed it to his dogs. Whilst going through the bones and flesh, he found something truly haunting. A girl's decapitated head, hidden under the pile of bones, was staring right back at him. Nobody knew at the time who had killed and dismembered the girl, who was confirmed to be Anastasia. It was later determined she had suffered from blunt force injuries, and her head showed wounds caused by an axe. The axe, a weapon that would soon be associated with Sofia, her weapon of choice. 7 years later, March 2013, another missing person. Sofia's friend, who was last known to have stayed at Sofia's. Anastasia Mikheya, 77, a pensioner set to move in with her daughter after selling her apartment for 3 million rubles. Complications with paperwork, however, meant that there was a delay in proceeding, so her new plan was to stay at a friend's place for the night before leaving in the morning to visit her relatives at a nearby province. Regrettably, she had chosen the wrong friend. The transaction for the sale of Anastasia's property was done in cash. She later deposited the money into her bank. Only Sofia knew of this. A postman came to deliver Anastasia's pension. Soon after collecting this, she became a missing person. Her relatives attempted to make contact with her, but were to make the harrowing discovery that her body had been found amongst the rubbish in the town of Bereskova. Sofia was first suspect. During a search of her house, the police found belongings of Anastasia, including her passport. They also found traces of Anastasia's blood. Cunning as ever, in the interrogation, Sofia was somehow again able to dissuade investigators from suspecting her. She claimed that Anastasia and her had quarrelled due to Anastasia's apparent arrogance, and as a result of a raise in blood pressure, Anastasia had a nosebleed, hence the blood. She said following this, Anastasia had slammed the door in her face, got into a black car, and went off to an unknown destination. How she got away free, given both the circumstances and the suspect's story, was remarkable, really. But Sofia's third strike would finally have her out. 6 years pass. Sofia's financial struggles are causing her a great deal of dismay. Her best option at this age for any income would be to rent out her spare room, which she ends up doing to a 57-year-old Ukrainian immigrant named Vasily Shylakich. Vasily worked as a janitor and had recently been kicked out of his own house after a fight with his wife. An affordable room, owned by a seemingly trustworthy old woman, seemed the perfect fit for him. January 2019. Vasily cashed his paycheck and went back to his rented room. He was never seen alive again. It was Vasily's employer who initially contacted the police to let them know he was missing. Sofia was under interrogation once more. Understandably so, she was his landlord after all. This time, however, she was not nearly as cooperative. So unaccommodating, in fact, the police actually decided to leave her alone. Until one day, a group of children playing in the streets close to Sofia's residence came upon something horrific. The remains of a man. Arms in a rubbish bag, other parts found in the nearby bins. The police, once aware, went about finding the man's remaining remains. The man who was now confirmed to be Vasily. They soon found his torso in heating pipes in a block near to Sofia's apartment. This obviously compelled the police to finally do a search of Sofia's residence. There were too many coincidences for even this accommodating police force to overlook. When they did so, the story became more gruesome still. The victim's bowels and intestines were in Sofia's fridge. They also came upon Sofia's trusted axe, with the blood of Vasily still upon it, as well as dried blood in the house, later found to belong to young Anastasia. When confronted with the blood evidence, she could no longer hide behind the lies. She was forced to admit her guilt, at least for the murders of Vasily and Anastasia. How had it come to this? By all accounts, Sofia and her husband had a good life. Even after their children left them, they still had each other. But her husband's death had an impact that was both instant and everlasting. Neighbours had more than once complained to police about her slaying cats whilst at her slaughterhouse butchering pigs. She began picking fights with children for committing the sin of being children. She moaned they were too loud and never let them play near her residence. Some feared her. On the other hand, there were few who would make fun of her rage and try to goad her with their pranks. "I will chop off your hands and head," she proclaimed, but even after the troubling change in demeanour, nobody was truly afraid of her. She was an old woman, after all. Anastasia was one of the more rebellious children, and in protest of Sofia's ways once made the deathly mistake of throwing ice cream on the old woman, after she told her to be quiet. It was soon after the young girl disappeared, and a few days after that Sofia renovated her home. This would not be the only time Sofia would do such a thing either, often washing the walls and replacing the wallpaper behind which lay the dried blood of her victims. This was also far from the only suspicious thing done by Sofia either. One thing that stood out the most was perhaps her willingness to serve jellied meat to the residents of the building. The same people whose limbs she had threatened to dismember from their bodies. She would find any opportunity to do this too, for both the children and the adults. One resident of the building, Titania, recalled how she was taken aback at the offer of food, and that her husband was wary of it, remarking that it smelled strange, and was promptly thrown away, and they never accepted food from Sofia again. As well as this, despite her hate for strays, she would often feed meat to the stray dogs, and stay until they had consumed all of her offerings. She was also rather unnervingly seen wearing the clothes of the people who had gone missing in her home. One such woman I have yet to mention was Nina Babenko, an 83-year-old friend who had come to Berezkova to stay at Sofia's. As it turned out, this action would be one of the last she was able to make in her life. Upon the unravelling of her crime spree, police were certain it was Sofia's doing once more, but no body nor concrete evidence was ever found. In spite of the general consensus being that the actions of Sofia were more than slightly alarming, no one complained, nor informed authorities. It was said that the residents of the neighbourhood were so poor and busy, they had no time to stop and play detective. In the case of Vasily, whose blood was found on her axe, he apparently came home with a friend, and they supposedly took advantage of Sofia. She said that this had left her with no option but to butcher Vasily after ending his life. Over the years, Sofia was so tactful that she managed time and again to evade capture against the odds. But once the police finally entered her apartment, she could no longer hide from her fate. Passports, shoes, clothes, and official papers belonging to her victims were found there. As well as this, various tools that Sofia used at her slaughterhouse were found at her home, with her victims' blood upon them. They found Vasily's organs in the fridge. Chunks of other human meat found in the kitchen proved also that she was a cannibal. She would, sickeningly, go on to admit feeding human remains to others. Whilst detained, Sofia was uncharacteristically social. She made friends with some of the inmates, to whom she ended up bragging about the murders of both the younger and older Anastasia. This would eventually get back to authorities, and after initial denial, she would end up detailing why and how she ended their lives as well. Sofia's justifications on why she committed the crimes were petty. In the case of the younger Anastasia, whose dried up blood was actually found in the apartment 14 years after her passing, she said that she had to silence the girl, who was too noisy and made the fatal error of throwing the ice cream on Sofia. She waited for her to come back from school and kidnapped her, admitting to keeping the poor child hostage for 2 weeks, using a variety of tools around her home to beat and torture her. In between this tirade, she would repulsively make the aforementioned phone call to the child's mother, assuring her of her safety. She would finally put her out of her misery with a blow to the head using her trusted axe. She then used the same axe to dismember her, before feeding her to the local dogs. Supposedly, her friend Anastasia was being too arrogant about going to Moscow to stay with her daughter. This sparked a jealous rage inside of Sofia, as her sons had left her. She thought her friend was making fun of her loneliness and poor living conditions. She again used her axe and ended her life, a night before her body was discovered, dumped in the bins. Later, in a courtroom in Khabarovsk, she again admitted to the killings. She was even given a toy axe to exhibit how she had assaulted her victims. She happily obliged. During her trial, she was kept in a cage, which she found to be disrespectful and inhumane, though not quite as inhumane as her. She was vile till the end, laughing in court and cursing at witnesses when the charges were being read out. Her demeanour indicated that she was unbothered about the pain and suffering she had caused, going as far as to make fun of the family members of the deceased. Whilst being kept in a detention centre, Sofia attempted to retract her confession. She was seen by a psychiatrist who said she was completely sane and in her right mind when she committed the crimes. And Sofia never claimed to be anything but. She took pride in what she had done. She told inmates of her brutality in a most boastful manner. It seemed as though she was taking revenge on people for being happier than her. Her trial was constantly delayed, with the COVID-19 pandemic being a factor. She was ultimately charged with the murders of Anastasia Alexenko, Anastasia Mikhieva, and Vasily Shelikich, and the desecration of their bodies. Police lacked evidence to charge her with other murders, although other cases were allegedly linked to her, most notably that of her friend, Heinous. When the court had finally decided upon her punishment in 2021, she was unable to hear it, as she passed away due to corona. She was deemed guilty in death, unable to harm another innocent soul ever again.